Rising from the depths of the oceans to drag ships into the abyss, sea serpents are amongst the most iconic sea monsters in fiction. They are seen as massive, snake-like beasts with reptilian or even fish and eel-like characteristics. While typically legless, some do possess fins or flippers, or even eastern dragon-like arms and feet which are relatively small in comparison to the body size. But what they all have in common is the thalassophobia that they all evoke on seagoers and land dwellers alike. So let's explore the biggest of these creatures to ever be depicted in fiction. We begin here with the tidal Najarala, which is a 52-meter-long snake wyvern from the game Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. This creature has a very long serpentine body that appears to be heavily armored with scales and possess very small front and back legs. Although its more famous cousin species in the game is a ground-dwelling monster, this one burrows under the ice in the frozen sea area. And surprisingly, in this list of the biggest sea serpents, we also have a titanoboa, at least a fictional version of it from the Meg novels. This one would be featured more in the upcoming Meg Purgatory book, where it is thought to be a 61-meter or 200 feet long ocean-dwelling snake. And speaking of ocean-dwelling snakes, we have the gigantic sea serpent or the giant sea snake from the movie King Kong Escapes of 1967. This 85-meter or 279 feet long gigantic white serpent is an enemy of Kong in the movie. This giant sea serpent only has a short appearance in the film, and then when it comes out, it briefly has a fight with Kong, where it is promptly defeated. Now there is also another creature called simply as a sea serpent here, and this one was seen in the movie and books of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. In the movie, it appears as a giant snake with a cobra-like head, but between the frills, there exist countless small insect-like legs that move about very eerily and creepily, and even exist in both its upper and lower jaws, seemingly functioning like insectoid mandibles. But if you think this is a crazy looking version of a sea serpent, then check this other one out. Here we have the supreme demon called the Leviathan from the game Ultra Kill. It is an incredibly long Titanic sea serpent capable of high-speed lunges, capable of fighting with tail swipes and mass projectile fire. But what makes it so creepy and scary is that its scales and skin are composed of multiple human heads, arms, and legs, all of them covering the sea serpent's entire body. Even its upper jaw is made up of a human torso, but with two pairs of arms attached to it. And on the top of its head is a skinless fat human that appears to have been impaled by 4 swords or crosses. As far as scary designs come, this one wins. Anyway, next we have here the Lernaean Hydra from the first God of War game, and although its entire body was never seen, it is immensely huge. Its multiple necks and heads serve as distinct bosses in the game, and only with Kratos killing the main central head was the creature defeated. But the Hydra here is an outlier. It is the only entry with multiple heads. The rest here have only one. Anyway, let's get to the list. So, if you have seen the One Piece TV show, then you would remember a gigantic sea serpent that was about to devour Luffy in a flashback of the past, but it was chased away by Shanks. This creature is called the Lord of the Coast, and it is one of the Sea Kings, which are gigantic oceanic monsters in this universe. His appearance is similar to a large oversized brown eel with red eyes and blue fins, and in the show it looks to be over 100 meters long. Next, from the book called Dracopedia, sea orcs are marine dragons that typically grow very long and serpentine, with legs adapted to fish-like fins. They spend most of their lives in the sea, only returning to shore to lay eggs, and they can grow to immense sizes. Species of these sea orcs, like the Jormungandr, grow to be over 150 meters long, and it is the largest sea orc species which spends its life in the deep oceans. Of course, there are smaller species of sea orcs, but in this list, let's just include this biggest one. And so, continuing with something greater in scale, we have the gigantic sea serpent from the game lore of League of Legends. And as their name suggests, this creature is a serpentine in body form and with back fins, with its mouth having sharp teeth, and appears that it can swallow and open up wide to swallow entire ships whole. They are believed to be hundreds of meters in length. So next, for kaiju fans here, especially Monsterverse fans, we bring you Titanus Tiamat, the 847 feet or 258 meter long oceanic titan that was killed by Godzilla in the movie Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. And in the comics, it is shown that it is still alive, maybe. Anyway, although being more of an eastern dragon in terms of body structure due to the same logic, it is also a serpentine kaiju, and one that lives most of its life in the oceanic depths. Then another treat for kaiju fans is the obvious inspiration for Titanus Tiamat, and this is Manda from the Toho movies. It is a sea dragon kaiju that bears great resemblance to Eastern dragon designs. It is most notable in its appearance in the movies Atragon and also in Godzilla Final Wars, where it was 150 meters and 300 meters, or 492 feet and 894 feet long respectively in both movies. Anyway, moving along, what do you know, even the grimdark galaxy has an entry here, and you'd probably wonder how a Sea-Serpent would exist in a dark space sci-fi setting of Warhammer 40,000. Well, there exists a planet in this chaotic galaxy called Ithaca, which is the homeworld of a Space Marine chapter called the Iron Snakes, and within its oceans exists a sea worm called the Craritir, and the males of this species can grow up to 300 meters long, and this is hunted by the initiates and recruits of the Space Marines as a sort of a coming-of-age ritual. But let's not forget that 40k has its more magical and grounded version in Warhammer Fantasy, and here it is the gargantuans that are the Sea-Serpents, and these can grow to similar proportions of hundreds of feet or meters, and with a body width of 9 meters or 30 feet wide, and thus it can swallow ships whole. So, going on back to the kaiju fans, in the same Monsterverse movie that showcased Tiamat, there was also another aquatic serpent called the Drowned Viper, which battled and was killed by Kong in the Hollow Earth. It appears as a sort of a titanic blue and silver eel that we estimate to have been around 1200 feet or 365 meters long, which is the unofficial size until Monarch releases the creature's profile. And for fantasy lovers out there, we also included the Atlantic Sea Serpent here. You know, the one from the children fantasy books called the Spiderwick Chronicles. The sea serpents here greatly resemble oarfish, but with very long worm-like bodies that can stretch for hundreds of meters. It is believed that even with its slim profile, a fully grown sea serpent is capable of swallowing a rowboat whole. And speaking about fantasy, in the Final Fantasy series, the Leviathan is a recurring summon and deity of water, often depicted as an immense serpentine dragon that commands the oceans. While its size varies between games and shows, in Final Fantasy XV, it reaches over 1000 meters in length. Known as the Tide Mother, it is worshipped as a divine being and has the power to conjure devastating tidal waves and storms. Then, in Subnautica, a water planet in a different star system, we find the gargantuan Leviathan, which is the biggest of the Leviathans here, and as we did for the previous Sea Orcs, we will only include the biggest Leviathan. This one is believed to be a long extinct behemoth whose fossilized remains suggested that it was over 5 kilometers in length, making it one of the largest known creatures in that universe. However, there seems to be still one living specimen, or at least one of them, and the version of this creature dwarfs the Ghost Leviathans and even the Sea Emperor Leviathans. Now, the God of War version of Jormungandr, the World Serpent, is an immense entity that Kratos befriends in his fight against the Norse gods. It appears simply as a gigantic white snake that dwarfs every other creature and geographical feature in the game. While its exact size isn't specified, estimates suggest it spans many kilometers. It is so massive that its movements cause tidal waves, and its voice shakes the land. But even this game version of the World Serpent pales in comparison to SCP-3000, which is also known as Anantasesha. This is an unfathomably long sea serpent from the SCP Foundation mythos. Residing in the Bay of Bengal, it stretches between 600 and 900 kilometers in length. But unlike the others, SCP-3000 is extremely long, but also extremely slim and thin. and it can secrete a neurotoxic substance that affects human cognition, leading to people who see it, leading them to have memory loss, hallucinations, and even existential dread. And we end this list with another Jormungandr. So sorry guys, but as of the current scientific age, the Norse myths of the world serpent is effectively fictional. Also known as the myth god serpent, it is so vast that it encircles the entire world, holding its own tail in its mouth. But when this myth and story was created, the world according to the ancient Nordic people was flat and supported by Yggdrasil, the world tree, and hence the probable length of the world serpent would only cover their imagination of how big the world was back then. So probably, if we're talking about circumference of that flat earth, it would be around 3,000 kilometers, I guess. Anyway, with that we end this video. Do hit that like button for support and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, fam.